everyone. Welcome to today's Good Old Days read. We're going to be reading from the book School Days. And the first one that we're going to read is Kid Sister Tantalized by Sibling School Adventures. And this was written by Doris Christensen from Buckley, Washington. My older brother and sister were already in school, and I envied them. I wondered what great adventures they were having. And I wanted to go too. When can I go, Mom? I asked over and over. The day finally came on September 1945. Mom pulled our 1936 Packard out of the garage, and I proudly got in beside her. We lived close to town and usually walked everywhere, but this day was special. When we arrived at school, I was holding my mother's hand. She looked so beautiful with her long black hair, brown hat, and long coat. She always reminded me of Ingrid Bergman. As we entered the first grade classroom, I became aware of the unusual scents, floor polish, crayons, and all the other children. My sense of adventure left quickly. I was scared. "Let's go home, Mom," I said. "We can come back tomorrow." Mom sat me down at a table with a picture book, and I became engrossed in it. "Look, Mom," I said. After a while, "Here's a picture of a little calf." There was no response. Mom had left. I must have been wide-eyed as the teacher came toward me and said, "It's all right. You'll be going home shortly, and your brother will be waiting outside for you. You can walk home with him." Sure enough, when the school day was over and I went outside, my third grade brother was there waiting. But he wanted to walk with his friends, not a kid sister. "You can follow me home," he said, "but you have to walk on that side of the street, and we'll walk on this side." I often wonder if children have the same feelings today when they start school. To me, that first day will always be a precious memory. The next story I'm going to read, Anticipation Gave Way to Anxiety on Long Walk to School. This is by Irene Rader from San Jose, California. And let me show you the picture of the last story I just read of the kids in the class. Whoops, let me get this lined up. I'm so terrible with lining stuff up. Hopefully you can see that. That's the class of the first grader of the story I just read. Okay. One of my first memories is from the spring of 1935 when I was 4 years old. Day after day, I watched my older brother and sister start off to school. Books and lunch pails in hand to spend the day in what I imagined was a special and exciting place. Each afternoon, I eagerly awaited their return so I could listen to their accounts of the day's happenings. The things they learned, their tales of playtime, and their mischievous escapades were so intriguing. Looking over the papers and books they brought home made me happy. I even learned to read the Dick and Jane books with my sister's help. I began badgering my mom to let me go to school someday. I whined, complained, begged, cried, until she finally decided to let me walk to school by myself one afternoon. The small country schoolhouse was nestled in a valley just below a gently sloping hill, about half a mile south of our farm in Walworth County, South Dakota. I'd seen it many times from our car on our occasional trips to town, and I'd peered in its windows on summer walks with the siblings. Oh, how I wished I could be sitting in one of those little desks near the front of the room. Eagerly started down the road. On this day, however, I'd go to school all by myself to join the children who were already there. Scrubbed and wearing my best dress, I started down the road in eager anticipation. I walked all the way past the garden gate before turning to wave goodbye to my mother. At the far end of the garden, I saw the clump of plum trees, where we played in summer and stopped to admire the pink blossoms. Finally, I trudged past the pasture gate, where the milk cows were, lazily munching the first blades of new grass. I gotta take a sip of coffee, guys. That hit the spot. Okay, our big red barn now seemed far in the distance. but I could not yet see the little white schoolhouse ahead. The school never seemed this far away before. A feeling of uneasiness came over me. Where was the school? Before long, I was near the top of the hill next to the gate that led to Uncle John's farm. Surely the schoolhouse should be in sight by now. My legs began to tire, and suddenly I wondered why I ever wanted to go to school in the first place. The next thing I knew, I was running as fast as my little legs could carry me, but in the opposite direction, with tears streaming down my cheeks. I headed for the safety of home and the security of my mother's arms. That September, I started first grade, just a few weeks short of my 5th birthday. I walked to school holding on tightly to my older sister's hand. That was my first real day of school, but I don't remember anything else about it. This says, helping hand. Older brothers and sisters such as these can make the transition to school for youngins easier for a first-timer. Let's see if I can get this up here so you guys can see it. I'm so horrible about lining up photos on the camera. There we go. Kind of. Okay. The next one is going to be from We Survived and Thrived. Depression Disposition by Bernice M. Vaughan. Recently I heard a strange story about an old gentleman who must have been of my vintage and lived during the Depression of the 1930s. When this old gentleman's wife died, he grieved sorrowfully. His children were concerned because his health was failing so rapidly. Finally, he was at death's door, and finding nothing physically wrong with him, puzzled his doctor, so his doctor posed a question. John, what medications do you take? John said, just those pills on the shelf in the bathroom. The doctor found there was a cache of prescription medications, all of which had been issued to his dead wife. The doctor said, John, those are Mary's pills. Yes, I know, said John, but I didn't want them to go to waste. I really know where that poor old fellow was coming from. That depression certainly left its deep mark on young people who were growing up at that time, as I was too. I hate to waste anything, especially food. I always save leftover food. Perhaps that's why my refrigerator's so overly crowded with bits and pieces of former meals, and there's no room for fresh food. Actually, I kind of enjoy dinners made up of several days' leftovers. Some of my meals are not too well balanced. However, I found myself eating a dinner of leftover scalloped potatoes and leftover mashed potatoes and gravy. I always have a fresh green salad with that starchy, fatty duo. That sort of legitimizes the excess calories in my mind anyway, and makes me feel less guilty. My farmer friends frequently bring me huge amounts of produce that they've raised. I've been known to eat zucchini squash until it's a wonder I hadn't turned green. Tomatoes? I've enough containers of them in my freezer to provide my family with soups and sauces for years to come. I just couldn't throw them out. I have a problem with disposing of clothes, too. Recently, I decided to clean 2 huge clothes closets in my bedroom out. I took each item out and looked at it fondly, remembering when I had bought it and where I had worn it, and then hung it right back up again. Maybe I'll lose some weight and I'll be able to wear that again sometime, I'd say to myself. Of course, I'm ignoring the fact that I have more recently purchased clothes than I have places to wear them. I also save scraps of paper to write notes on, and the last piece of a bar of soap goes into a jar. I keep planning to melt it down and make shampoo for the dog or something. I haven't really decided just how I'll use it, but it's good soap, I tell myself. I've saved jars of all sizes and shapes for years. Only a new program for recycling glass has saved me from having to park my car in the driveway to make room in my garage for those glass jars. When I think of my struggle to get through college in the depths of that awful depression, I'm amazed at my own fortitude and persistence. I had to walk 3 miles to school and then climb 2 flights of steep wooden steps to reach my classroom. That walk was enough to discourage most young people, and a lack of proper food and clothing compounded my difficulties. But even during Missouri's severest weather, I was in the science building by 7 in the morning. My mother's skill at reconstructing my cousin Esther's hand-me-downs helped, but warm coats, raincoats, and shoes were not on her agenda. The colors and materials of Esther's dresses weren't always appropriate for college wear, but I wore them anyway. I remember one dress in particular, sheer black crepe with lace inserts in the sleeves and the skirt. Pretty fancy gear for dissecting frogs and dogfish in the science lab. I think of those days now, and I wonder what my fellow students who lived on campus in snug dormitory rooms and ate hearty, well-balanced cafeteria meals thought of my skinny, bedraggled little farm girl in their midst. They were always kind to me, though, and I made some lasting friends with whom I've kept in touch with for many years. I made good grades, too. I must have seen that college degree as my way out of the life of hardship that my parents endured on the farm. In spite of my ability to cope with adversity, something about those depression years left me with an acute fear of poverty. When I received $80 a month for my first teaching job in a 2-room school in Farley, Missouri, I opened an account in the little bank and socked away $10 from each paycheck. I remember having $80 in the bank one spring when my father asked if I would loan him money enough to buy seed corn. There went my carefully hoarded nest egg. I've always urged my children and grandchildren to save, save, save. Save money for a rainy day. They smile at me indulgently and then go on their merry ways. I don't know if you can see that with the glare. I hope you can. It's just a photo that was in the book. Read one more. This one ain't that long. I'll read one more. Better Than a Silver Spoon, and this is by Betty Artlip Lawson. One is indeed fortunate if memories of one's childhood call to mind more times of laughter than times of sorrow. It is my great good luck to be able to say, I may count myself as one of this fortunate group. I was most certainly not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Indeed, few assets of any sort belonged to the family into which I was born into in 1931. My arrival brought a 5th child into an already full house, but we had something in our home that more than made up for the lack of material things. My brothers and sisters and I had the great good fortune to be members of a household where proper parents were in charge. These were fine parents and had the power to make us laugh when we thought we wished to cry. They were possessed of a magic that caused us to forget the discomfort of extreme cold and miserable heat, and we experienced plenty of both in the state of Iowa. These 2 fine adults had the power to help us be proud of wearing patched, faded clothing. Their special abilities allowed our dear parents to keep from us children the knowledge that our family was considered by others to be poor. I knew of poor families. These had a father who was addicted to the drink and or punished children severely. Perhaps these poor families were cursed with a mother who was considered shiftless and seemed forever angry with her children. These mothers might let their children go hungry or be dirty, perhaps hungry and dirty, in the very poorest of families. But my family most surely wasn't in that category. My dad did not drink, swear, or administer any kind of physical punishment. He didn't make much money when we were growing up, but he loved us and was very good to us. Our good fortune knew no bounds, for besides this very good father, we were blessed with a mother with a marvelous outlook on life. She made us laugh, she played with us, and she never gave us reason to doubt her love for us or her ability to care for us. She worked hard and laughed at her troubles and never let us suspect that we were considered poor in the eyes of some. Mother saved thin cardboard and made us a deck of cards. We children learned rummy, hearts, fish, and all the other games we were able to learn. Children from all our end of town came to play with our homemade deck of cards. They might have had factory-made cards at their home, but they didn't have our mother who made the games so exciting. The sweet treats that came our way were shared with all who were in our home. Many winter evenings, our already overcrowded 3.5 room house would come alive with neighborhood children. Our house might not have been as warm in temperature as some of our more prosperous neighbors' were, but we soon forgot the cold in the efforts of our taffy poles. In our house, you were never warned to be careful or quiet. We ate every bite of the taffy once it was sufficiently plastered onto us and some of our surroundings. We were required to clean up ourselves before going to bed. But by the time we returned from school the following day, the rest of the messy evidence had vanished. Once again, our small, unfurnished home was spotless and ready for any and all action suggested by one of us 5 half-grown children and our baby brother. I shudder to think just how hectic our mother's days must have been. Yet she never seemed tired, and she always was ready for a game of cards, checkers, or whatever presented itself. It was her way of life. She spent her free hours during the day in an all-out effort to make for us a childhood that we could remember. My family never accepted government commodities, as did many of our neighbors. I can remember how as a very young child my mouth would salivate at the sight of a child with a welfare orange. But we knew that the very evening of the day of the commodity release, we would get one of our mom's special treats for an after-dinner snack. It might be only popcorn balls made with sorghum, but to us it seemed food fine enough for the angels. We grew up sturdy and strong, and we might have been denied creature comforts, but we never lacked the all-important love and security of a happy home. And we were among the most fortunate to have been blessed with parents who did not question the importance of these two things, but set about providing them for us to the best of their ability. Dad passed away in 1972 at the age of 78. He was proud of his 6 honest, hard-working offspring, and we never gave him cause to be ashamed of any of us. We knew what having a father of his caliber was worth, and we were more than pleased with him. Mom was as good a grandmother and great-grandmother as she was a mother. She was a favorite of all her grandchildren, and she allowed them to use her house as they pleased, just as she did with us. To say that this woman was beloved is a gross understatement. She was one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever knew, and there are at least 5 others who share my opinion. To that number should be added her 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, who had the good fortune to know her well. The other great-grandchildren can always take their parents' and grandparents' word for it. No, we never thought of ourselves as poor. We could never be poor with such wonderful parents. And I think this is a really wonderful story. I wouldn't know what that personally feels like from my childhood, but I love reading about good parents that treated their children the way that children should be treated and loved and accepted and validated. So here's the picture that was at the bottom of that page. If I can line it up. There we go. Alright guys, that concludes this Sunday's Good Old Days reading. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope your weekend is a great relaxing one. Know that you're in my thoughts. Blessings.